My friends, the China you see in tech commercials and in Beijing's growth reports is not the real China. It's a statistical construct. Chinese propaganda tries to sell the idea that its current problems are just temporary market fluctuations, but the truth is much darker. China's problems are mathematical, and mathematics doesn't accept decrees. What we're witnessing is the death of the price mechanism and its replacement by decree-based mechanisms. In a healthy economy, price is the signal that tells the producer what to make and the consumer what to buy. It's the language of reality. When Xi Jinping decides with the stroke of a pen that the growth target is 5%, he's not predicting the future. He is issuing an order, and when the order replaces the signal, the system becomes blind. Remember the Soviet Union. To meet the nail production targets set by weight, factories would produce a single, giant, useless one-ton nail. If the target was by quantity, they would produce millions of tiny nails that broke at the slightest touch. Mao Zedong did the same during the Great Leap Forward, ordering peasants to melt down their working tools in backyard furnaces to produce steel. The result was porous and useless metal, pure scrap.
Uso e imprestável.
Agriculture failed when orders replaced signals, making the system blind. China's system today is producing one-ton nails across the digital, real estate, and industrial sectors. When the Chinese government sets a target, the system stops knowing what is true. Local bureaucrats lie to the regional ones, who lie to Beijing, which lies to the whole world. And you're still betting on the great Asian dragon to save the world? The result of all this is total epistemic blindness. The Chinese Communist Party lost the ability to read reality because it punished everyone who dared to describe it. You must remember that scene from The Emperor's New Clothes. Dai sustain. Anyone who said you're naked would die. And when you kill the price signal, you kill efficiency. The real consequence is that capital stops flowing to where it's needed and starts being buried in useless projects just to satisfy the party's ego. In the previous video, we talked here about 85 million vacant apartments in China. There aren't people to live in them, there aren't people to buy them. The waste of resources is so vast that it creates a debt burden that no future growth can pay off. But this blindness wasn't a miscalculation, it was a power play. And the first target of that choice was the one who really carried the weight, the private sector. There was a time, during the era of Hu Jintang, when the Chinese leader acted like the conductor. He allowed different voices and factions to play their parts, as long as the final harmony served the growth of the country and the party. The private sector was the engine, the job creator, and the source of innovation. Everything worked very well and propelled China to the size we see today. But Xi Jinping doesn't want to be the conductor. He wants to be the solo musician, the star, the Lady Gaga of the East. He wants absolute silence so that only his voice is heard. He sees market autonomy not as a tool for prosperity, but as a threat to the absolute control of the party. The ultimate symbol of this change was the case of Jack Ma. The richest man in China, the face of global innovation, was about to carry out the largest IPO in history with Ant Financial, but Jack Ma made a fatal mistake. He criticized the pawn shop mentality of Chinese state-owned banks at a public forum. Days later, the IPO was cancelled by direct order of Xi Jinping. The richest man in China disappeared from public life for months, and Alibaba was broken up. The message was clear. In Xi's China, it doesn't matter how efficient or innovative you are. If you become an alternative center of power to the party, you will be destroyed. The regulatory crackdown that followed spared no one. Didi was removed from app stores after going public in New York. The private education sector, valued at $100 billion and employing millions of young people, was wiped out overnight by decree under the banner of common prosperity. The gaming sector was labeled as spiritual opium, limiting playtime and destroying the market value of Tencent and NetEase. Xi Jinping decided that the economy must serve ideology, even if it means burning trillions of dollars in market value and destroying the confidence of a generation of entrepreneurs. And Xi Jinping's latest move? Influencers, YouTubers, Instagrammers, and TikTokers are forbidden from flaunting wealth on social media. Now everyone is equal. If you're rich, hide it, don't show it, don't publicize it. More than $1 trillion in market value simply evaporated. But the loss wasn't just financial. Foreign capital didn't leave China because of a momentary panic. It left because it read the contract and saw that private property in China is just a temporary loan from the party. The real consequence is the brain drain and capital flight, leaving China dependent only on inefficient state-owned enterprises that survive on subsidies. If the money is fleeing, China is betting everything on Elascard technology. But that card has hit a glass ceiling, or rather, a silicon ceiling. We need to be honest and recognize the merits. China had an impressive vision in solar and wind energy. They dominate the supply chain for batteries and critical minerals. But the heart of the modern economy isn't made of lithium, it's made of silicon. And this is where China has entered a maximum security prison. The technological bottleneck is called ASML. The Dutch company holds the absolute monopoly on EUV lithography machines, extreme ultraviolet, the only tools on the planet capable of printing chips below 7 nanometers. Without these machines, you don't have cutting-edge AI, you don't have advanced supercomputing, and you don't have real technological sovereignty. Due to direct pressure from Washington, China is prohibited from buying these machines. The case of DeepSeek, which recently surprised the world with its algorithmic efficiency, is proof of Chinese ingenuity in times of scarcity. They are trying to make up for the lack of hardware with brilliant software and extreme optimization. But artificial intelligence is ultimately a brute force race at scale. While the West has an abundance of NVIDIA's H100 and B200 chips, China is stuck trying to squeeze blood from a stone with outdated chips and smuggled hardware. China may be able to run efficient AI models, but it can't train the frontier models that will define the next decade of civilization. They're building the aqueduct, the data and energy infrastructure, but they don't have the faucet. Do you understand now? And their pipe is long, it reaches far, but you don't get anything out of it. China doesn't have cutting-edge processing power. They're doomed to always be technological followers, always one step behind, dependent on espionage and reverse engineering. Without cutting-edge technology at home, China tried to buy influence abroad, but the trillion-dollar Belt and Road project ended up becoming a global flop. The Belt and Road Initiative was sold as the Marshall Plan of the 21st century, but there was a fundamental difference. The Marshall Plan aimed to rebuild allies to create a free market. The Belt and Road Initiative aimed to buy obedience through debt. Pay attention, because this is the most dangerous moment for China. Beijing poured hundreds of billions of dollars in loans into countries that any beginner risk analyst would know couldn't pay back. Just look at the list. Sri Lanka, Zambia, Egypt, Pakistan, Laos. The logic behind these loans was always political and strategic, never based on market logic or economic viability. Beijing wanted leverage, wanted strategic ports, covert military bases, and guaranteed votes at the UN. But the result was global resentment. When Sri Lanka couldn't pay the debt installments for the Hambantota port, China took control of the port for 99 years. This didn't generate gratitude. It created the perception that China is a neo-colonial power that uses the debt trap to erode other countries' sovereignty. They lend you the money, knowing you won't be able to pay, then they take your assets, your land, and everything you own. Bankrupt countries are not productive allies. These are state-backed problems that require constant financial bailouts. China is no longer seen as a generous creditor that offers infrastructure with no moral questions asked. Today, it is seen as an unforgiving debt collector that sparks outrage in the streets of Colombo and Lusaka. Chinese soft power died under the weight of interest payments its partners cannot meet. The real consequence is diplomatic isolation and the formation of defensive alliances against Beijing's influence. When the empire stops attracting partners and starts collecting angry debtors, those with inside information start looking for the emergency exit. Capital flight from China has reached alarming levels, and the government responded in the only way it knows, hiding official statistics and tightening border controls. But smart money always leaves traces. The luxury real estate market in Singapore and investor visas in Portugal and Thailand are saturated with Chinese millionaires who have decided that Xi Jinping's Chinese dream is actually a nightmare of confiscation and surveillance. The Chinese businessman works, builds, prospers, and the Communist Party takes everything. But it's not just money that's fleeing, it's hope and the future. Youth unemployment in China is so high that independent estimates put it at over 40%. And the government stopped publishing the data for several months to adjust the methodology. The most educated generation in China's history is moving back in with their parents because there are no jobs that match their qualifications or that pay a decent salary. The guy got an engineering or medical degree and he can't even work as a rideshare driver. And the response from this disappointed youth was the Tangping movement. It's the ultimate silent protest. Young people decided to stop competing, stop wanting to buy a house, stop getting married, and stop having children. They simply gave up supporting the system with their effort. The youth gave up on the Chinese dream because they realized that the social contract was unilaterally broken by the party. The promise was, we give prosperity, you give obedience. Xi Jinping kept the demand for obedience, but delivered stagnation and ideological control. The consequence is the demographic and social winter that no propaganda can hide. But how can a country that produces more scientific articles than the rest of the world be declining? Simple. Because science there has become a factory of invisible nails. China is proud to lead the world ranking in scientific publications and patent applications. But if you look behind the smokescreen, you'll see a record rate of retractions and systemic fraud. The incentive system of the Communist Party rewards the sheer quantity of papers, not real knowledge or disruptive innovation. Researchers are pressured to publish massive volumes to meet bureaucratic targets and secure funding. This gave rise to the infamous paper mills, which only serve to sell authorship in fraudulent studies. The paradox of innovation is relentless. Authoritarianism may even scale existing technologies with frightening efficiency, but it kills frontier creativity at its root. And to invent something new, you need the freedom to make mistakes, intellectual dissent, and a system that doesn't punish out-of-the-box thinking. In Xi's China, out-of-the-box thinking is seen as a threat to national security and the stability of the regime. Chinese science has become an exercise in copy and paste on steroids. China is a master in applied engineering, taking a Western idea and scaling it up to billions of people, but it is incapable of cutting-edge innovation. They can't invent their own revolutionary semiconductor or the next frontier of biotechnology because the intellectual environment is sterile and monitored. Don't think too much. The consequence is that China will remain dependent on foreign technology even if it tries to pretend otherwise. And this paralysis is not due to a lack of intelligence among the Chinese people. It's the byproduct of a political system that prefers loyalty over competence. A system that is devouring itself out of pure paranoia. Xi Jinping systematically destroyed all the safeguards that allowed China to grow in previous decades. He eliminated the balance of factions within the party and destroyed the feedback mechanism that allowed errors to be corrected before they became national catastrophes. Today he rules alone at the top of a pyramid of fear. Surrounded by men, yes, who are terrified to give him any bad news that contradicts his worldview. The constant purges in the military ranks and the disappearance of ministers show that Xi doesn't even trust his own shadow. Chinese history has a grim warning for Xi Jinping. Emperor Zhongzheng, the last of the Ming dynasty, was a hard-working, austere, and deeply paranoid man. He purged his own most competent generals. He suspected treason in every shadow and in every military defeat. When the internal rebels and the Manchu invaders reached the gates of Beijing, Zhong had no one left to defend him. He ended his days by hanging himself from a tree in the coal hill alone while his empire collapsed. The dragon is not just suffocating under external ambitions. It is suffocating under its own authoritarian nature. Xi Jinping believes that total control is the only solution to the crisis. But total control is the main cause of the economic and social stranglehold. And this is the only debt that no financial swap or accounting maneuver can resolve. The final consequence is systemic collapse, which may take decades to fully manifest but is already inevitable. The dragon is trapped in a labyrinth it built itself, and the exit is being closed from the inside. The Chinese miracle did not end due to a lack of capital resources or human talent. It ended because the strangling hand of the state decided that absolute control was more important than the prosperity of its own people. What we are witnessing is the slow and painful decline of an empire that forgot that freedom is the oxygen of innovation and that truth is the foundation of any real economy. Xi Jinping's China has chosen the darkness of ideology over the light of reality. But now I want to hear from you. The board has changed, the mask has fallen, and the dice are now on your table. Do you think China still has a hidden card? A technological black swan that could save it? Or is the hanging of the Ming dynasty the inevitable fate of Xi Jinping? Leave your comment now with a single word: control or collapse. I personally read each one to adjust our next intelligence analyses and understand how you see this shift. What we discussed here today is just the surface of a much deeper and more dangerous reality that is being cooked up behind the scenes in Beijing and Washington. And if you want access to raw data, to uncensored information with names attached, and with the time we don't have here to cover it all, come check out our intelligence bunker. Without control, without restrictions, everything becomes even easier to understand. Learn to read the map ahead of the herd, before the first explosion. We are a community of over 3,000 analysts funding the truth and decoding the future in real time. The QR code is on the screen, the link is in the description and in the first pinned comment. Join the community. And we also created a channel for series and movies with great recommendations for you to enjoy with your family. Don't know what to watch or don't have time to pick the best shows to enjoy with your family? We do that to help you. No woke stuff, no whining. The link is in the description, in the first pinned comment, and also in the card that will appear on your screen. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, leave a like on the video, and share it with your friends. Now, shield your mind. I'm Shimon Oliveira and I'll see you next time. See you then.